Hi, I'm Christine and welcome back to my sewing studio. Today I'm going to be making Simplicity number 8059 in the D, which is this long duster or long sweater as I like to call it. It's this white one here. I will be making the long one. I'm going to be doing size medium, which is 14 to 16. I normally wear a size 12 and I've always found that going up a couple sizes in these patterns ends up being about the right size for me. Thing is, it's 4 yards that you're going to need. So it has taken me quite a while to do this pattern. I am using this knit, this really pretty charcoal knit fabric. As we all know, this stuff can get pretty expensive. So that's why I have not bought 4 yards of it to do this pattern. But since Joann's recently went out of business, I got it on sale. So for this pattern, you will be needing the pattern pieces 7 through 13. You've got the front, back, casing, a tie, front facing, back facing, and sleeve. I have cut out all of my pieces, and you also need interfacing for the facing, front and back facing. The facing is this long piece here, and I'm kind of disappointed in myself because I cut it using my rotary cutter. I wish I had gone a little bit more exact because I don't know if you can see this, it's all beat up. So we'll see how this goes. The facing may end up being a little bit not as wide as it's supposed to be because I'm going to have to fold in all this mess. And then I've also got the back facing with the interfacing on that. That'll be the only interfacing you'll need is for your facing, the long pieces and the small back facing. And again, I do recommend cutting this with scissors. I have my rotary cutter that I use, especially with these long pieces. It makes it great, but I didn't think about how thin this piece is, and with the knit fabric, it kind of curls on the edges. So it would have been a lot better if I just cut it with my scissors. You'll need scissors, obviously, some pins. I like using these weights for holding down the patterns, especially on these long runs. Some thread, and that's about it. Step number 1 says to stay stitch your necklines on back number 8, pattern piece number 8, from, let's see, here's the, this is your neckline here, from the edge of your neckline into the center, which is basically sewing about 1/2 inch from the edge along the edge of your pattern piece. This stitch stays in the whole time, and it's mainly used just to reinforce your edges. Then you also want to use it on piece number 7, and it says to go from, this is piece number 7, here's the armhole over here, and it comes at an angle and then goes straight down, and there are a couple notches in here somewhere. It says to do the stay stitch from the top here along the front, and this is the part that goes right here on either piece, on both pieces of number 7. Again, that stays in the whole time, it just reinforces. Sometimes I don't use stay stitch depending on the fabric, but since this stuff is very flimsy after you cut it, I'm definitely using the stay stitching. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So this is something you'll love. I have not sewn in quite a while since I made that last video about a pillow. So I just started, I haven't sewn in a long time. First stitch I go to do is the stay stitch, and I screw it up. I forgot to make it a longer stitch length. Let's see, I usually put it at 7. I had it at 5, and I've even like put a little hole in my fabric. I don't know if you can see that hole right there. Yeah, it's funny because I have gotten quite a few comments on my other videos about people saying that they don't like to see it, but they appreciate it when I record things about me screwing up, because it makes them feel, you know, you don't have to be perfect. And it's true. You definitely don't have to be perfect, and you can't be perfect. And that's just to show you, this is the first thing I just now used, my seam ripper. For the first stitch, in a long time, and I had to rip it out because it screwed it up. So I'm going to go back. I'm making it a longer stitch length, and I will do my little stay stitch. Okay, so we're going to go on to step number 2. Number 2 has to do with the tie, which is piece number 10, which is this thin little piece here. And with this fabric, I can already tell it's not going to be fun. With step number 2, you're going to take piece number 10, fold it in lengthwise, fold it in half lengthwise with the right sides together. So I've done that here, and I've pinned it in half. And it says you have to sew a scant 1/4 of an inch from the edge. So you're going to have to sew a seam, sew it together about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, which, just judging from my stay stitch, this is not going to be fun. It does recommend stretching, which you do. It is recommended when you sew with a knit fabric to stretch it as you're sewing it. So we'll see how this goes. I might just get some yarn or something to use as a tie. We'll see what happens. Okay, so that actually worked better than I thought it would. Stretching the fabric as you go really helps. One thing I did do though, I didn't start at the end. I didn't put this into the machine. I actually started about right here, about just like that much down from the end. I started there, went all the way down, and then I flipped it over and did this part. Only because since this is so thin and tiny, I knew that if I started it at the top of right there at the top of the tie, it wouldn't catch. So I do recommend starting it there and then going down, then flipping it over and doing that part. But I can show you how I did it. Okay, I have folded up the second piece of number 10, our second tie, and I'm going to go ahead and sew this part. Again, I'm going to start from about here, right after my first pin, start there and go all the way down and stretch as I am sewing. I do have to put the needle in, lift up the foot every once in a while to make sure my seam allowance is going okay. Okay, so I did one side and now I'm flipping it back. I'm going to flip it over, start at the beginning of start at the end of where I began. Does that make sense? And then finish it off. Okay, so this is the final piece. I'm going to iron it out and try and figure out how they expect me to turn this around. Okay, now that we have both of our ties made, we have to flip them right side out. So this is another part of step number 2. It says with a needle and thread to thread the needle on one end of your tie and then bring it all the way through. I have never done this, so we'll see how this works. So I am assuming that you put the needle through one side of your tie, not both of them, because you do have to get it all the way through. And I'm just going to run it through the center of the tie. This is going to take a little while because I am sure the needle's going to keep getting caught on the fabric. All right, you're gonna see my glasses because I can't see this. I've got the needle in through here now, and I've kind of got it where I'm just sliding the fabric through slowly. See, look, the needle just came out on the other side. So you do have to make sure it doesn't do that on either side. But I'm just gonna keep slowly doing that. It started working for a little bit until I stopped. Of course, I made the thread way too long, so it hasn't even started going through yet. I recommend making the thread length shorter. All right, the needle's through. So now, honestly, I don't know what to do. Okay, so I'm just taking, damn it, should have used so much thread. Okay, so I think I figured it out. You have to take the end that's got the little thread through it, fold it in, try and get it inside your tie. I use a chopstick to help it start, kind of pushing it through. And then I'm using the thread that I just threaded through to pull, and you have to kind of, well, no, it helps to get your fingers wet. You have to help it along. So I can't really show you exactly. So I'm pulling this thread right down here. At the top here, I'm just trying to help it pull through the rest of the tie. Honestly, I'm just kind of pushing it through with my chopstick. Seems to help a little bit. Okay, I actually started getting going. There were a couple spots that it got stuck on something, and I used my chopstick again, which is a yanked. And now you could see, here's the right side, the outside. Here's the inside. And so it's going from here all the way through to out here. Once the correct side comes out, it's easy. And it's like, nothing. So there you go. I'm going to try it again, cutting down this thread though. I do not need that much thread. And we'll see if that goes a little bit faster. All right, I have finally finished the second tie. This second one was a lot harder for me. I wasn't able to, it got stuck like a quarter down. It wasn't moving. I was pulling the thread. It was not moving at all. So I ended up taking it all apart and realizing I couldn't even find the black thread in there that I had strung through. So I just threw it away and got a new one. I recut a new one, sewed it. This time I used an orange thread. You can see that? The orange thread from when I stuck the needle through and went all the way through, pulled it through. That way, I don't know, it was just easier if something happened, I was able to open it and see, which I ended up not having to open. I think what happened was when I was stringing the needle through, you know, you're not trying not to catch either side. I think what happened was I must have caught part of the sides. You know, I must have gone out and come back in. And so as I'm trying to pull it through, it wouldn't move. That was another reason why I used the orange thread, so that if it did come out and go back in, I would hopefully be able to see it on the outside there, knowing that I screwed it up. So these are done. I'm telling you, next time I think I'm just going to use a nice little ribbon for the tie, and I think it'll be just fine. Okay, now we're on step number 4. I don't know, you can tell it's dark out already. That's how long it took me to do this stupid tie. Okay, I think at least an hour. Anyway, step number 4 has to do with the front piece, which is number 7. We are going to take the tie and we're going to baste it on the front here where there is a dot. So I have pinned my front to my mannequin here because I usually don't make marks on my fabric, only because it never stays. When I cut it and I use like either chalk or a little marker, a fabric marker, I can never find it again for some reason. So instead, I'm just going to pin it up to the mannequin, and then I'm going to pin my pattern piece to the fabric. The dot that you're looking for is on the front piece of number 7, the front part of number 7. It's right side up, and what you're going to do is pin this where the dot is, and then you're going to baste it. I do recommend basting a couple times because you don't want that to fall off. Before I baste it, what I'm going to do is make sure these guys are on the same spot at the shoulder. Look at it and make sure that the ties are at the same location. All right, I have both of my ties on, and even right now they don't look like they're in the right spot, that they're the same height. I could have them pinned incorrectly. I could have both sides pinned incorrectly up here, but you can see they don't look like they're in the right spot. Now, they are basted. Basting means I made the stitch a longer stitch at number 7. It just makes it easier to pull it out, which usually happens. And I went down and back up. So it is basted a couple times, so just to hold it, because the basting stitches usually don't hold very well at all. That being said, I'm going to wait until I sew the piece number 8 to the back, to try it on, and then see where I need to see if these actually match up, because they could be matching up perfectly right now, but when I sew this shoulder seams together, one could be off a little bit and it could screw everything up. So I am going to hold off on switching them until I get until I get the piece number 8 sewn to the back. Okay, the start of step number 5 was to take the casing, piece number 9, fold it inside 3/8 of an inch on either edge of the long side. And then you're going to pin it on the wrong side of number 8 along where the casing line is. So here's our piece, our pattern piece, and the casing line is, where's the casing line? Casing line is right here. And there are 4 small dots, which you are going to pin the case to. You can see that. So there's my case right here, my casing. I pinned it up. The folded edges are on the inside. So this is the wrong side of piece number 8. I've got the casing folded in on the wrong side, even though it doesn't really matter since the casing is going to be on the inside of your coat or sweater. And I've pinned it up to my piece number 8. See if I can lift it up for you. Now you're going to sew it to number 8 along the edges, along the top and the bottom folded edges. Now it says to make sure you don't sew past the dots, which is basically 1/4 of an inch on either end. So start at 1/4 of an inch in, back stitch to make it stay, go all the way across and end at another 1/4 of an inch on the inside, on the top and the bottom part. Okay, step number 6 says to cut a piece of elastic 4 3/4 of an inch long. So my elastic here is actually only a 1/2 inch thick, and it does call for it to be a 1 inch wide. I'm sorry, a 1/2 inch wide. It calls for a full 1 inch wide elastic, but I don't have that. So your casing, which you can't really see very well, is right here, from here to here. So the elastic is a lot smaller than the length of your casing, because it's going to just kind of gather your back a bit. And you're going to cut it 4 3/4 inch long, and then you're going to insert it. So I'm just sliding it through. Now, since it's shorter, I'm going to pin the one edge first. I'm pinning the one edge in place first, and then I'm going to feed this through somehow to get the other edge. Okay, so we were able to get the elastic in easy, and I pinned it to the edge, but since this is shorter now, it's going to be hard to get this elastic to this edge. So I have tweezers here. I'm just gonna stick the tweezers in, find the elastic somehow. I've got the elastic, and now I'm just pulling it through. So you see now I've got it out on the other end, and I'm going to pin it. So there, so now you see it's a nice little clump there. You're going to want to stitch along the edges now. It does say match up to your original casing stitch, because on the outside of the sweater, you're going to see all these stitches. So if you can, try and find out where the edge of your last stitch was. So you go toot toot right there. And actually what I think I'm going to do is just stitch on the outside. So I'm going to turn this around. And I'm going to pin it across, up and down. Where did my pin go? I'm going to pin it this way. I think I have the elastic in there. Then I'm going to take out this other pin from the other side. So now I can get in here and I can see where my last stitch ended when I was sewing the casing on, and I can match it and sew over the elastic. I know the elastic is here, I can feel it. So I can sew it on the outside. I think that'll be the easiest, because then you know for sure you're matching up all your seams and it doesn't look weird. And I'm going to do on the other side as well. Ouch. So I've pinned the other side. On this side, I'm going to take this pin out. And now I've got it all ready. So now I'm going to sew along the edges here, up and down, matching my original seams so it all looks like one big rectangle, and that I've got the elastic in there. Okay, so I finished my casing. Let's see if I can show you. I started sewing it. I sewed one side and then I sewed the second, and I realized the elastic did not catch. So I had to go back in with my tweezers, pulled it through. Tweezers worked really well. And then I made sure I sewed it, catching the elastic. So when I was originally reading all of these instructions, I like to go through before making the video just to kind of see what I'm up against. And I could not for the life of me figure out what number 7 meant. It says separate casing and elastic from back, zigzag ends of casing and elastic together, being careful not to catch the back. I couldn't figure out what the heck they were talking about. What I realize now is that it's basically saying you want to separate, you want to pull the ends here and just zigzag this part, zigzag the casing to the elastic, not having it show up on the front. I'm not going to do that. I don't think I need to. We'll see how it works when I wear it, but the elastic is cut on here. This is on the inside. The elastic is in there, and then the casing is covering the elastic. I even ironed it so that the casing is for sure covering the elastic, because I can see the elastic itching your back if it's showing. But I'm just going to skip over number 7. Okay, step number 8 is sewing the front pieces to the back piece at the shoulder seams. So I have flipped over my 7s because they were right side out, because we had sewn on these. So I flipped them over to make sure I have right side to right side. Just double checking, even though it's really hard to tell in this light. My back is a right side, wrong side out. I'm sorry, wrong side out. So you have my facing here. And then I pinned up here along the shoulders. Okay, I made sure I'm on the zigzag stitch, which is this one right here. You can see it without the glare. The edges of this fabric curl up so much. It is a difficult fabric to work with, I tell you what. I am stretching it a bit as I'm going. I got to the end there, my seam allowance got a little small. Now I'm going to do the other shoulder. So on this side, I started again when I was pinning it, this fabric just curls so much. So this side, I kind of got a little overlap, and so I kind of ended too early on this side, but that's what happens. And now we'll have the facing to help cover all of that. Okay, I have sewn the back number 8 to the sides, number 7s at the shoulder. And I also went ahead and serged the edges. You definitely don't need to do that. And actually, some people will use the serger as the seam. So instead of sewing the zigzag, they just use the serger. I don't know why, but it scares me. At least when I sew with my machine, like a zigzag or a straight stitch, if I screw it up, which happens quite a bit, I can go back in and take out that stitch. With the serger, it just cuts everything off of it, and it's a lot harder to take out a serging stitch than a regular stitch. I'm going to turn it around, so now I can see how off I am on the ties. So I've got this here, and actually that looks almost perfect. So let's see, I could go like this. Let's see here. I'll try it on probably tomorrow. I'm going to stop for the night because it's getting dark and tired. Of course, we'll have the facing and everything on there, but I wanted to see how close those ties were to matching up. And so I'll try that on tomorrow to kind of see where it fits, make sure I don't need to redo the ties, but that's about it. So we've gotten through step 8. Of course, that number 4 step took forever. So I will see you tomorrow. Okay, so it is day number 2. I had kind of hoped that I would have gotten done with this in one day, but these ties, as you remember, took a long time. So I woke up in the middle of the night and I started thinking about this. When I basted this on, I put this at the very end of this piece here. So I basted it, it was touching the edge. And I thought about this, these aren't very long, and we're going to have the facing on there, so it's going to be flipped around, and then we're going to have beads on here and tie a knot and all that stuff. So I was worried that we wouldn't have a long enough tie. So I went ahead and took them off and put them on about 3/4 of an inch from the side. On the pattern piece, you can see it. The dot that you put the piece on, you put the tie on, is about 3/4 of an inch from the edge. So I went ahead and did that. Then I tried it on to make sure that the ties are in the same location. It doesn't look like it, It doesn't look like it on the mannequin, but it does match up. If they don't match up right now, I recommend fixing it, because this is the way it's going to be now, since you've got your shoulder seams all sewn together. Our next couple steps have to do with the sleeve, number 13. You are going to take the sleeve, the round part, the top part that goes onto your garment, and what we're going to do is do a couple based stitches from this one notch to the double notch. So this rounded area, you're going to do 2 basting stitches along the top there. And that is because then we're going to pull them and basically bring the sleeve together so this will fit into there, because this right now is way too big. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Okay, I have moved my stitch length to number 7, the longest it'll be for the basting stitch. Now it says to go, I can't remember how far in they say, but you do want to have 2 stitches along the edges. I know how difficult this is with this fabric, so after I do these 2 stitches, once I sew it onto the main garment, you will see these stitches probably, so it'll be easy to take out because it's a basting stitch. Okay, so now I've got both stitches in. You can see it's already starting to gather a bit. So that worked out well. Now I'm going to do the second one. Okay, we finished the first part of step 9, which is doing the 2 stitches along the top to ease the shoulder. Now it says to stitch the bottom part of the sleeve. So with right sides together, you're going to fold it in half. Make sure your notches match up. And then you've got your eased stitching up here. You're going to stitch from this part all the way down, basically the straight part of the sleeve on both sleeves. Okay, I have sewn my first shoulder or sleeve together from the bottom up to right before the curve starts. Now when I laid these out, I matched the end, the notch, and the other end together, and they seem to not match up. So then I just let it kind of settle. I let the fabric lay as it on its own and didn't stretch it, and they all ended up matching up. I also didn't use a full 1/2 inch, although it looks like a 1/2 inch, seam allowance, only because I like my sleeves to be a little bit bigger. So I made the seam allowance a little bit thinner than the shoulder seams. Okay, the end of step 9 says to do the hem on your sleeve. So it recommends actually doing the hem right now, but I do not recommend that because you're going to have to sew these on. First off, ease them, sew them on, and then hope that your hems match up. It'll be a lot harder to move this up and down on your shoulder than changing the hem, because I have no faith in the hems matching up at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to step 10. I'm going to ease it up, put it on there, and I'll show you how I do that. And then once the sleeve is on, then I do the hem. Okay, now we are on to step number 10. We are putting the sleeves on. You are going to turn your sleeves. Oh, first off, and I think I forget to mention this a lot, go ahead and iron your seam that you just sewed, the underarm of your sleeve. It's always good to iron your seams. Not the basting stitches, but when you do a seam, iron it. Now you're going to turn your sleeve right side out, and you're going to have your garment wrong side out. Okay, I just realized that step number 8, we forgot to sew the side seams together. So before we stick our sleeves on, we do need to sew our side seams. So go ahead and pin them, sew them all the way down. So before I begin, I just want to double check that it is right side to right side. This is the original shoulder seam. I've pinned right side to right side so that I don't screw it up and have to redo the entire seam. because that has happened before. So I started sewing my side seam, but the thread got all jammed. I thought maybe I didn't have it on the zigzag. Turns out it was on zigzag, and it looked like a huge complete mess. So I had to take it all out, and what I did was I actually redid the thread. I rethreaded my machine because the tension was just all screwed up for some reason. This happens a lot on this knit fabric, and actually I have a video that shows what you can do if this happens, which is real easy. You just rethread your machine, and so hopefully now it'll work better. But I swear, I mean, I've been sewing, what time is it? I've been sewing since about 2 o'clock today. It's about almost 4 o'clock, and I feel like all I've been doing is ripping seams out. I have finally finished the side seams. It's so difficult. Every seam or every stitch I tried was screwing up. I stretched it, didn't stretch it, different tension. It was horrible. So I am not recording the sewing anymore because I have been cussing too much and I don't want you to hear it. So now we're back on this the sleeve again. So I have my garment wrong side out, and I need to make sure I have the correct sleeve again. So I need to find the sleeve, which is right side out. You also have to stick it inside. So I'm going to stick it inside the garment. So I've got right side to right side on the inside. I'm going to, let me make sure this is the right side. Yeah, so I've got the 2 notches on this side. So I know my notches line up correctly, so I have the correct sleeve. Again, I'm going to pull the sleeve tight like this, so I kind of get the top of it here, and it is going on the inside up against the shoulder seam. And I'm going to pin that. Okay, and then I'm going to pin the bottom. So again, I'm going to stretch it out. Stretch out the sleeve so I kind of know where the bottom is, and pin that to my side seam. Now, you'll want to pin where the notches are. And see, normally what I do is I normally ease up on the shoulder before I stick it in here, but the instructions, I'm trying to go by the way the instructions say. So it says to stick it in there, first stick it in there and start, pinning where I'm showing you to pin, and then use the base stitches to ease on it. Because now we can see just how well the sleeve will fit. So if your sleeve is too big, you basically take your stitches, which see now it's hard to do, and you just kind of pull and gather, that's the word I've been looking for, gather up the sleeve on either side. And so that way it fits your garment perfectly. So now go ahead and pin all the way around, and then I'll show you how to check it. Okay, I've pinned my sleeve all the way around. I'm going to turn it right side out, and you can kind of see approximately how it looks. Now what I recommend doing is basting it on. That way, if it puckers in a weird spot or not, if it's too much puckering on one side, not enough on another, you can take out the base stitch and redo it. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so after I pinned on my sleeve and I checked to make sure it looked okay, I did a base stitch around the whole sleeve. Then I turned it right side out, checked it again, and it looked fine. But then I decided to try it on, and I'm really glad I did, because the entire sleeve was twisted. It was the weirdest thing. It was like I'd started on one end, and as I was sewing, I pulled too much and the whole thing was twisted. So I took out the stitch, which is why I'm glad I base stitched it. And then I sewed it again, checked it, tried it on, everything looked fine. So then I went through with a standard stitch. And then I did it on the second sleeve. Now what you're going to want to do is go along the top here, the seam, and make sure you don't have any of that ease stitch in there that we used to tighten it. If there is a little bit, I found a little bit on mine, you just can hopefully easily take it out. So now that our sleeves are on, we want to hem the sleeves. It's much easier now that they're both on. We're going to turn it inside out, and it says press up 1/4 inch on the raw edge. This thing curls about 1/4 inch, so I might end up going about 1/2 inch. I guess it depends on how long my sleeves are. So you're gonna wanna try it on, pin up your sleeves, see how it looks. And then, again, I recommend base stitching the hem. Then check again and see how it looks before you do a full-blown stitch. Okay, so now that we are finally done with the sleeves, we are moving to the facing, which has to do with piece number 11, front facing, and back facing piece number 12. Now, actually all 3 pieces, you need to put your interfacing on. Now, on this interfacing, I mentioned at the beginning of my video that I don't recommend using one of the slicers to cut the fabric. I recommend cutting it with your scissors, trying to be as exact as possible, because my facing looks like a mess. As you can see, I think I cut the interfacing with scissors, and I cut the fabric with my little slice. What is that called? You know what I'm talking about, the slice thing. And it's horrible. I really, really wish I had cut it with scissors to make it nice and straight. So now what I'm going to do is actually go through and serge all the ends to try and make it straight. It's not going to matter so much on your garment, but it's really irritating me. But what you're going to do in step number 11 is take your back facing, which is this circle, or the half circle type. You're going to match it up with each of the pieces of number 11. On the tops of number 11, they all have the side of number 11 that has the notch. You're matching it up with your back facing. So make sure you've got the right sides of 11 on the left and right. The notches should match up pretty good. You're going to sew the shoulder seams right here and here, and that should be step number 11. Okay, I'm back. This is, I think, the 3rd day now that I've been working on this. It's not the pattern that's so difficult, it's the fabric that is difficult. I know I've been saying it this whole time, but I am not using this type of fabric on this project again. Anyway, we are on the next step, which is number 12. We are pinning the facing to the garment. Now make sure you have right side to right side. I just went through, pinned the entire facing on, and realized it was right side to wrong side. So I have to take it all off and put it back on again. So you'll want to make sure you match up as best you can the seams to the shoulder seam, and then the center back, which of course I never mark the center back. Usually what I do is match up the seams, and then it just kind of lays there. If your seams don't match up perfectly, it's not a big deal, because this entire thing is flipping into the garment and you won't see it. So now you're gonna sew it all on. What I recommend is starting from the back and going down one side, and then come back and do the other side. That way, as you're going down, you're kind of pulling it down, and that way, wherever it ends, it's not gonna screw up and get all jumbled up somewhere back here. If you start from down at the bottom and you work your way up, you're going to get, this area is going to probably get a little off. because you're moving everything as you're moving up. So start from the top, go down, go back to the top, and do the other side. Now, also, you want to make sure, because we've got this guy, and when we flip this in, you want to make sure the end of this is in your seam. So when you turn it on the inside, you have no opening there. So I marked it on here, and I mean, this is where my tie ends. So I'm gonna need to make sure my seam covers that area. So I'm going to have quite a large seam allowance in there. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so I have sewn my facing all the way around my garment. Now, step number 13 says to understitch by pressing the facing and seam away from the garment. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to take the seam allowance and sew it to the facing. So you will be, here's my facing on the outside of the garment. I'm going to take the seam allowance, sew it to the facing, close to the actual seam. It just helps hold the facing in place better. But honestly, I don't know if I'm going to do that with this one. I'm just ready to be done with it. And after you do that, you will turn the whole facing inside the garment, and then we're going to stitch the facing to the garment. You're not going to see those stitches on the outside of your garment anyway. If that's something you like to do, is stitch that understitch, then go for it. But I actually think I'm going to skip that step just to get done with this. The next step, number 14, is to turn your facing to the inside of the garment, press it down, and then to stitch the facing to the garment using a base stitch. I think that just kind of cleans it a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We'll see how this works because my facing is so many different sizes, size widths. I am going to definitely have to measure it out and make sure that on the outside of my garment, this stitch looks nice and clean and the same distance all over. That's what you definitely want to have to do. I kind of do recommend sewing it with your outside out so you do see how well that stitch is looking, since this is something that will be seen on the outside of the garment. Okay, so it is now the third weekend that I've been working on this. I'm finally at the end though. I am going to get this done today. So the next one, one of the last steps, is number 15, where we are doing the hem. So you want to turn your sweater, it's going to be hard to see, wrong side out. So turn it inside out, and then you're going to want to pin around the bottom. I went up about 3/4 of an inch, just because I thought it wouldn't be so difficult to sew that, and pin it all the way around, iron it, try it on, make sure it looks straight. Now what's nice about this is that since it's so flowy, if it's not exactly straight, I don't think it'll show so much, but it's good to try it on, turn it right side out, try it on, look at it in the mirror, make sure it looks like it's straight, and then you're going to turn it back, wrong side out, inside out, and sew. I'm gonna try and sew right along, because I did serge the bottom. I'm going to sew right within the serge stitches, and we will see how that goes. Okay, couple things I forgot to mention. On your hem, if you didn't serge the edges, then just make sure when you fold it over, fold the rough edge inside. So it's kind of like a double hem so that you don't have a rough edge on the end there. I was reading the instructions 15 and 16. They say a lot of stuff where basically is just you're doing your hem. So you could try and go by what instructions they say, but it is just kind of folding it up, looking, making sure it looks right, and sewing it. The last one, also, when I do the hems on the edges, so I usually start, let's say from this end, I will start down here and go all the way around, and then I'll flip it around so that I can fold in the corner, and so boop, just that part. It's really hard to fold in the corner, start your machine right here, doing the back stitch, all that stuff. That's real difficult for me, so I always start about here, go all the way around, and then I flip it around, and then do this end. That's just something I've learned. Last one, yay, is number 17, where we are tying our little beads on. So if you decide to put beads on your end, on your little ties, I found a couple that I happen to have. I don't know if you can see them. It's kind of hard to see. The reason I chose these mainly is because they are the only ones that will fit onto the tie. These ties are pretty thick, so hopefully these look good. So I'm going to insert this little guy. Hopefully, I don't know, this is really going to be kind of difficult. You're going to have to twist the tie to get it as thin as you can. Twist it and then try and just shove it in there. Try and grab the end of it. There we go. So grab the end of it, insert, and then it says just tie a knot. So there you go. I'm just gonna tie one knot, see how it holds up, and it should be good. Of course, it's gonna be hard to make them equal and even, but I will try. And then of course there's also this long part of the end of the tie. I didn't get the knot right on the end, so I don't know, I guess that'll look okay. And then I'm going to try this side. There we go. Try and make them as even as possible. I don't know if you can hear in the background. My husband's watching the Bronco game. Hopefully going to the playoffs. Okay, I guess they look pretty even. I mean, I just tied it. Of course, when it's tied, you can't tell exactly how long they are anyway. So, I mean, I guess I'm happy with this. The one thing I've noticed on this fabric, which you all know I love, is that, let's see if I can show you. Down on the bottom, it's all drapey looking. The way I pinned it and sewed it, it lays almost like in a drape. You can kind of tell. At this point, I don't care. I will for sure wear it because I do think it's really cute. And again, if I do this again, I will for sure be doing a different fabric. I hope you all enjoyed it, even though it did take me 3 weeks to put it together. Please like my channel if you haven't already, and I would love to hear any comments that you've got. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.